Present.
Commissioner Peterson.
Present.
Commissioner Federico.
Present.
Commissioner Duran. Commissioner Bacon.
Present.
Chair Ray Hobby.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right. First on the agenda is approval of minutes from February 5th, 2020.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. All right. Old business? We don't have any? None. So we'll move right to new business. Election of officers. Do we have nominations?
Is there anybody interested in either one of those?
I nominate Ray Halby as chairperson.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Opposed?
All opposed?
Okay. All right.
Vice Chair.
Chair, you need a vice chair. And I would recommending asking your fellow commissioners if anyone is interested in filling that position.
I'm interested.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Commissioner Peterson as vice chair.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Opposed?
All opposed?
All right.
None?
There you go.
Congratulations,
Congratulations.
Mr. Chair, Mrs. Vice Chair.
Sweet.
Do we have to move seats?
You don't, and
Sure.
I don't know that it matters
Okay.
as long as the vice chair is seated
Sit
next to
next
you.
to the chairman?
Gilbert would know this better.
Yeah, I mean, usually the vice chair sits next to the chair, some in one side or the other.
It doesn't matter?
No.
Okay.
There's no.
Great.
It just says, once they've been elected, move to their appropriate seats, so
You're already seated
we're already
there.
seated. All right.
That saved time.
That's what we did it.
Let's get right down to it, right to business. First item on the agenda, well, actually, second item is Cool PZ 200203, proposed amendment to the zoning code changing the size and height limitations for subdivision signs.
Sure.
Director.
Chair, Commissioner, is this on? Can you hear me? Hello. Yes, now I'm live. As you know, we've got a lot of home builders coming into the area, and one of the signs we saw, the way Journey had up there, they meet the requirements. If you notice McClellan Meadows, they're fairly small. Some of the older signs we used to allow, if you see on Coolidge Avenue, right on, they're fairly large that Brown Homes put up, because that's what the size it was before, so we allowed them to put the sign back up. And then, being that sign was up already, I think Richmond American looked at that sign and put another sign up the same size. So we looked at it and thought, we've got KB Homes coming, we've got, Richmond American, we've got Brown Homes already working, they may go into another area. We have other builders coming in, potentially, I mentioned KB already, potentially D.R. Horton coming back. They're still working on that. I haven't had a confirmation that they're absolutely go, but I think they're pretty far along in their process, both Martin Valley and I think I've heard, and can't confirm, potentially Heartland. So knowing that, and knowing that they like to market their product, we thought it was appropriate to look at the size, and Tim and I met with Rick and we talked it through and decided to come to you with a change in the code to allow a larger sign that could be seen from the road for marketing purposes. Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
Height.
Yep, height, a little higher, bigger.
Almost double the size, right?
It is pretty much, and the examples provided on the staff report, these are signs that sit out there and exist. Wade Journey's sign, when they permit it and you give them these specs and stuff, and then you see it, and you're like, that's smaller than you're used to seeing for a home sign. And while the area of that sign they have there meets the requirements, it's actually 12 feet tall, which is 2 feet taller than the 10-foot allowed. Now, the bottom of that sign is right even with that 6-foot block wall that it's behind. If it were 10 feet, you wouldn't even see the bottom of the sign from the road. So you can't put them within 10 feet of a right-of-way, which is generally just a landscaping track, and then there's a wall. So they go on the interiors of these 6-foot walls. They can be hard to see, and we want these home builders to be successful. They need to drive traffic to their areas. So this is pretty standard in what we've seen other places. Seeing that Richmond America sign kind of inspired this because it was
Yeah, it looked pretty
obviously
good.
out of compliance, but it made us step back and look and say, should we adjust this? And so
Yeah,
that's what we're trying to do.
My only concern is, I know that we had an incident where that particular sign on Coolidge Avenue blew down.
The brown,
Yeah, the brown and brown.
It
they're
probably,
required to put them back up.
yeah, it was probably rotted from a long time ago when it was, because it sat there.
It was a heavy wind we had.
Yeah, I mean, it had been there for a long time, so they just replaced the post, and I think it was just rotted out. It sat there since.
It likely
yeah.
was, and as Director Lopez stated, the only reason they got to do that sign is they refaced an existing sign.
Right, and
They
never
weren't
was taken
permitting
down.
a brand new one, but there is a reasonable argument to be made. When they move out of there, that sign has to come down. A sign wouldn't be allowed to be placed in that location again because it violates the right-of-way requirement. But that size sign would be allowed if the commission recommends approval and council approves it.
How many signs are they limited to? Is there any limitation?
There is limitations to signs, Commissioner Bolin.
It's one on each frontage, right?
One per front.
It's kind of based on street frontage, so one sign per perimeter abutting street, and they are not transferable from one street frontage to another. Now, we interpret this as per builder, because in a case like McClellan is a great example, and Heartland will be there too. You have 3 builders in McClellan right now. Well, you get one sign on Coolidge and one sign on 9th. Who doesn't get a sign? Right? So, and co-location would be nice. It'd be real hard to enforce. And these signs, they can't be within a certain distance of road. They can't cause visibility issues. In your developments like Heartland and stuff that are a little larger scale, you got a lot more perimeter to work with. McClellan is not super wide, but it's a half-mile long. But it is easily pretty much accommodating what needs to be in there. So we're not changing the amount of signs they can have, only the size in which they're allowed. And they are permitted some certain off-site signage, which we're not changing either.
It looks to me like you are permitting basically a 10 by 10 sign or thereabouts,
Mm-hmm.
and one that is going to be at least 8 feet off, could be 8 feet off the ground.
Commissioner Bolin, that is the top of the sign with this change is allowed to be 18 feet tall.
Right, so if you got a 10 by 10 sign, you're going to have an 8 foot off, so that'll be 2 feet over the top of that fence.
Which
if
is-
they need to be over the top of the fence.
Absolutely. I concur.
I don't know that they need a fence, that need a sign that's 18 feet off the ground. I'm questioning whether a 16-foot high sign would accomplish the same thing, because we don't have any fences that are over 6 feet tall around any subdivision.
Well, it's not so much the fence, but if you notice McClellan Meadows, one of the requirements for them was to actually develop that subdivision down lower than the surrounding property. So if you look at towards the front, it actually is below the road, which you can see, which that's the way it was approved, because of some some concerns about the view shed and all that. But in some cases, where there's the road is not level, so you can't really in my opinion, you can't use the fence as, it's not equal to the road all the time. It's going to do this in some cases. So we thought that, we liked the way the Richmond American sign looked and the way it sat. It doesn't look that big when you're actually driving by it. And we thought, well, that'll work. And we measured it and said, that's what we want to do, because it's basically the same sign as what's over on Coolidge Avenue. So we've allowed it before. We're just trying to make it part of the code.
The recommendation was kind of based on how that sign was built. It's actually 17 and a half tall.
We just rounded it up.
Is it 96 square foot sign?
Yeah, it's 10 by 12.
10 by 12?
No, it's not 10 by 12. It's
I was going to say, that I can do the math there.
it is 96 square feet. I forget. I measured it.
Yep.
But we've presented it as 96 square feet and 18 feet in height. It is, if the commission would like to modify either of those numbers and move forward as is, vote it down. This is all, ball is in your court.
These signs, I'm sorry, these signs can only be located close to the vicinity of where they are building, so we're not going to end up with a bunch of signs out on Vakayan Road that show the same thing, and it's going to be directing people to come over to 9th Street, because we had that before.
We have, Commissioner Bowen, the last round of building was under a different zoning code, and I don't know what it said.
But under the zoning code we have today, can they put signs up a mile away from their location that are the same size as what we're looking at here?
Not this one.
And if so, I don't like it.
As far as it I'm
For signs beyond the boundary of their subdivision for directional, they're only allowed in the commercial and industrial districts. They need a use permit that is valid for 2 years or until all the lots have been sold, whichever occurs first, and they shall not be more than 48 square feet or 10 feet in height,
Okay.
That
which
stays
is
the same.
the size of the Way Journey one basically that's on there. So they're smaller. And then weekend directional signs
Be picked up.
can't be bigger than 3 feet in area, 3 square feet in area or 4 feet in height. There's some guidance on where they can be placed, and they're directional or weekend only.
I just don't want to be coming into Coolidge and find a whole bunch of these signs all on one corner. We're going to have 5 builders building in Coolidge, and I don't want to see 500, basically 100 square foot signs sitting in a row out on Vakayan and Skousen.
Yeah, understandable. The ones you see on Vakai and Skousen will be for the builders in Heartland, if at this size.
But that's a commercially zoned corner, I believe, is it not?
It's zoned, kinda, yeah.
I think
It's
zoned.
designated PA or commercial within the PAD. So
Right, so everybody could put the sign there.
no,
No.
because it's zoned PAD. It's not zoned commercial or industrial. The zoning is PAD. The use is commercial, and McClellan builders would not be permitted to put off-site signage at that size there anyway, because that's not their subdivision.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's,
It'd have to be in their subdivision they're building houses in.
I've been driving through Gilbert often enough and there and see these endless rows of large signs identifying different home builders.
Yeah, I'm less concerned with the quantity because they're temporary signs in theory. My concern is that they don't get taken down.
I was going to say, they're not
And
temporary.
again,
They're still
that's
sitting
my
out there.
concern,
I-
is they don't get taken down.
And
Well, we enforce that, so if they don't take it down, we write them up. And if they don't take it down, we take them to court.
90 days for them to do something about it.
Yeah. I mean, we have
Maybe.
the code enforcement mechanism to take care of it, so.
Back when everybody left in 2008, they all left their signs.
Yeah, and we didn't,
We didn't do anything
Yeah.
about it.
we did not.
I still get it, yeah,
We
and,
just want to make sure that don't happen again.
yeah, it's just, I think, I don't know what happened then. You know, I mean, it just didn't get addressed, I guess.
Can we put into this thing that the signs are removed 30 days or 60 days after they cease building?
There's already language in the,
It's already in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's part
It's
of
an
it.
enforcement issue. It's not
Yeah.
a lack of code provisions.
Okay.
We just didn't go after them at the time. Some of them went bankrupt. Some were, so then the properties were owned by the banks, and then you send a letter to the bank, they don't do anything. Yeah,
We
it's
can't remove them, the city cannot just remove them if they don't?
And find them.
because it was private property, so they'd have to be see, we can do it with houses if they're a blight and they're a danger to the community. But if the sign's not going to fall and hit anybody, and then I think we'd have to go to the lawyers and find out if we have that right to do that.
The building official can compel
Yeah.
a property owner to remove a non-conforming sign.
Yeah.
He has that authority.
So if they're too long, then that would be non-conforming, right?
Mhm.
So that would give us the right to that's yeah, we'll find a way. I mean,
Okay.
We have mechanisms in place to do it.
We didn't do it before, so now it's going to be us yelling at you to do it.
Yes,
Okay.
I understand.
hopefully that won't happen for a long time. There'll be a building for one of them to stop.
We can wait.
We're not gonna have to worry about it for a long, we won't be.
We hope so.
There
Yeah.
are plenty out there that you can't even read anymore. They've been beat down by the sun so long.
I know I want to go knock
They are
the one
blight.
down at Vakayan and Skousen because people still ask me when that market's going to open, and I'm like, that thing is, you can't read it, and they're still asking me when are you going to open that? What was it, Albertsons
I
or
think it
something?
says fries.
Is it Fry's or Albertsons? They still ask me. I'm like, oh, I got to take that sign down.
Is there anything in the permit that says, when they apply for the permit, that says that they, how long they have for, I mean, like you're talking about right now, the sign at Buckeye and Skousen, it's pretty old, it's been there for a long time.
Yeah, we'd have to get the property owner to remove it. We haven't gone after him yet, but we could.
We can, and these signs all require temporary use permits,
Okay.
which beyond what is stated in the code for 2 years or all the lots sell, whichever come first. If they're 2 years in and they still have 100 lots left, they need a new temporary use permit.
Right.
It's going to send them back a whole $110. But on temporary use permits, there are lines where we can add conditions and things beyond what code requires.
Yep. Yeah, so we have the tools to get them down. We apologize for what happened last time, but we just didn't get taken down.
Tim,
Yes.
I think for to be reasonable, let's change this from 96 square feet to 100, where they can build a 10 by 10 sign.
Okay.
I mean, you're gonna cut 6 inches off from an 8-foot sign to get 4 feet off from it.
That is,
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you're right.
that is a reasonable proposed amendment to the way it's been presented, and within the commission's purview to do so, so if
Make the motion.
the motion will need to contain that
I move.
recommendation. Wait, this is still a public hearing,
We still have
Almost.
but we're getting there
You got to open it up
Okay.
for all the public.
for all the public.
So if they're allowed to go 18 feet, and the fence line is only 6, we're telling them they can be 12 feet above the fence line?
In total,
Yeah.
Total, yeah.
Could be.
Can we limit that?
Sure. It's 10 feet now, which is, we need more than that. Like I said, the weight journey in your example is 12 feet off the ground, which allows you to barely see the bottom of that sign over the fence.
But it doesn't mean you can't remodify your sign so that your
That is
pertinent
correct.
information is visible.
That is correct. As Commissioner Metcalf has suggested, modifying the square footage allowance, the height can be modified per your agreement, I guess.
See, and if you go give them a 10 by 10, they can make it an 8 by 12
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know,
and flatten it down. I mean, I would, because you want it down where people can see it when they're driving by, not going down the road like this trying to see out of the windshield.
I drive by this Richmond America one daily. It doesn't look bad from the road. When I stood under it and measured it,
Yeah, it's different.
it's giant. But
When driving by, it's
from
like,
9th Street, it doesn't seem that,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem very obnoxious, but it is, again, at your leisure to,
Well, and you are compelling them to put it behind their wall, unlike the one on Coolidge Avenue.
because they'll adjust it. It's not a war. I don't think it's a war to go higher. I think they're just going to put it to where you can see it well, and that's how they're going to, because they want people to see it. So if it's too high and they drive by and you don't look at it, it does no good. It's a marketing tool, That's all it is. And you don't realize when you look at something right in front of you versus driving by. If you notice, have you ever seen a freeway sign that's down on the ground? The letters are huge because you're driving by a certain speed and they look little. They look normal.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that, it's that thing that you get from the signs. So that one we liked. I mean, we said, that's looks really good. We like it. So that's why we said let's instead of making them tear it down, let's see if we can adjust it for everybody so that they can all use that. Help us sell homes.
Any more discussion? We'll open it up to the public. This is a public hearing. Nobody stepped to the podium, so we'll close the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
A motion to approve Cool PZ 20-02-03 as presented.
With the amendments discussed.
With
Make-
the, with the, with the amendments discussed.
before we move to a second,
We have to
I'm,
specify.
the 100 square feet versus 96 feet, I'm clear on. The 18 feet, there was
We're good.
discussion at lowering, but not a number thrown.
No. We're okay with it.
So
Just the 100.
changing 96 to 100 is the motion.
Yes.
Okay.
That's for a second.
Okay. Now can I get a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. All right. Last item on the agenda. Cool PZ 20-02-04, a discussion item about alternate types of housing as they relate to the zoning code requirements. Rick Lopez.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is a request we had from the Commission to actually look at, put this on as a discussion item. So Tim had done some research on these houses. We've talked about it, so we brought it back to you so we can have just a formal discussion about tiny homes and zoning code requirements. So.
Mr. Hanson.
Thank you, Chairman Halby. So I'm looking at tiny homes, and surely everybody's heard about these now, and they're everywhere. And you can buy kits to build them, or you can buy already built ones. And the problem with most of those is they're not built to any codes, so they're not really a house. Now, some of them are, and they fall into a category of 400 square feet or less, which they are classified as an RV or a park model, and must be built to ANSI codes. Over 400 square feet, they are considered a manufactured home by HUD and must be built to a manufactured home standard. There's many that are not. Now, both of those things, if you had one that was built to ANSI standards, RV park model, there's nothing preventing you from putting that in an R6 zone other than park management. R6 is recreational vehicle and park models, like Indian Skies. So as long as Holcomb is more of a mobile home, but they do have some allowances for recreational vehicles. And then bigger than that, manufactured home standard, which you can put in an R5 district. They would not be able to be placed within the ag or overlay district because they are likely not double wide. If they could meet that requirement and building code requirements.
There's no requirement for double wides.
The manufactured home overlay zone does require double wide placement.
I thought we cleared that up a couple meetings ago where double wides were not going to be the only size we could put in overlays.
The commission recommended disapproval of the amendment, which council opted to approve.
The council opted to approve that.
Correct.
Yes.
Ooh, I wasn't aware of that.
So that is
Yeah, discussed it.
within the manufactured home overlay and the ag zoning. Double wides are required if you do a manufactured home.
Right.
You can still do single wides, but R5 is your zoning district for that. Within our residential zones, our R1, 2, 3, and things like that, there are no square footage minimums for those zones. You can site build a tiny home in any of these
by zoning.
that meets building codes, and there's not a square footage requirement.
Whoa.
Where a lot of these tiny homes run afoul of building codes have to do with ceiling heights, egress requirements, and stairways. They just don't meet minimums for that.
I thought bedrooms had.
There are some minimum room sizes too. For
Yeah.
certain rooms require minimum sizes. And so that's where these kit-built ones fall short most times. If you were to site-built one, you can meet these requirements and have you a tiny home on a lot on Hess Avenue or wherever you want to put. There's not a zoning hurdle for that. Most of the hurdles related to using this as development are building code related. You could establish a PAD with 10 acres or more of land and make it a tiny home subdivision where you kind of develop your own zoning standards for setbacks and parking requirements outside of the adopted code. There is a 10-acre minimum. That 10-acre minimum is also required to zone property R5 or R6 for recreational vehicle parks or mobile home parks. So it's within reason. So that the PADs allow you to kind of make your own zoning code. So a good example where that would be useful within a tiny home subdivision is a regular subdivision requires 3 paved parking spots per house. Tiny home probably doesn't need 3 parking spots. If you got 3 people in there, it's going to be pretty cramped. So a PAD could modify those parking requirements and some densities through that process and allow for it.
In exchange for open space or something else.
Yeah, there's some back and forth that goes with PADs, and it's a multi-month process usually, but they eventually come to you and then council.
Commissioner Hoppy? You mentioned, Mr. Hanson, that the tiny homes are considered a manufactured home if they are not site-built on premises, rather than a modular home?
HUD considers over 400 square feet manufactured home under RV park model.
By my research, modular homes are not RVs and they're not manufactured. They are a house that is built in a factory, come out on a truck bed, and set on a permanent foundation. They have no trailer wheels, steel frame under them, anything. They are simply a house that has been pre-manufactured and can be set in place.
Yeah.
Where a manufactured home has a ADOT label and certificate and a HUD label, a modular home does not have any of those things. Not required to. It is simply a site-built house that is built in a factory, delivered by a truck, and then put by a crane, putting it on an existing cement base.
There is nothing in the zoning code that prevents a modular home from being constructed within a subdivision.
So on my lot that I have, I can put a modular home and have it just set on my cement base, because it's not a manufactured home.
Your burden is to meet all applicable building codes,
Of course.
which you can do. These kit homes and tiny homes that
Right.
people often want to set, and then they retrofit to meet building codes, you're better off starting from scratch. It'll be cheaper just to do it right. I mean, your traditional stick-built houses, 12, 1500, there's a lot of places that bring these walls in whole on trucks, and you tilt them up, put them together. That's
what D.R. Horton's gonna do.
modular, not manufactured. So there's manufactured, think of as a mobile home. I mean, I think manufactured
It
is
was nice enough
correct.
to print out the difference.
So
Like roofing joists.
there is,
They don't cut them on site, they're pre-manufactured in the factory.
right, so there's, exactly. And there's nothing that stops that from happening now, provided you meet building codes and setbacks. Thank you, sir.
That's just an explanation of the difference between a manufactured modular home. And the major difference is, one is going to have a set of wheels and axles under it, which are going to be removed at the site, but could be put back in. They're seldom moved a second time, but they could be. Where a modular home is not designed to do that. They're going to put a cement stem wall and set it on it, and it's going to be a permanent foundation, permanent fixture to that land with no steel undercarriage, and usually they come in pieces, so you get a 2,000 square foot home may come in 6, 8, 10 pieces, but it's all constructed to be put together when it arrives. Just like a manufactured home is two pieces that come together and they merge the two together. So it's a similar but different scenario. The reason I say that is because when we talk about site-built homes, we were thinking about stick-built on-site, which is what we're seeing around. When D.R. Horton comes, they're going to have all those walls already pre-cut, and they're going to simply walk in there with a truck and set them in place, put the trusses on top, and then they'll start sheetrocking. The modular goes one step further. It's all sheetrock insulated, and all they're doing is putting units together and slapping different pieces. Because we're going to have the same thing when we start doing these condex boxes. They're going to start building condex boxes with a house in them and bring them out there and set them on a foundation. That was one of the things we need to look at.
Right, and the modular homes is certainly an emerging trend. I mean, more and more people are using them. If they're coming in, not just the wall, but the sheetrock wall with plumbing and electrical, it has to have some kind of certification and inspection attached to each piece that says this meets
They do.
our codes. And
It's all part of their build process.
some of the hurdles currently in Coolidge that they might run into is we are on 2006 building codes, except for electric is 2005. Some of the more recent building codes and addendums have addressed some of these things, and in certain areas we have some leeway. And I think in your packets there was like an appendix Q for tiny houses. This is something that's in the 2018 building code, specifically addressing those three areas where tiny homes are often deficient, being the ceiling height, the stairways, and the egress requirements. So this is part of the 2018 codes, and you know, we could potentially move to this, and it would relieve some of those. It still doesn't necessarily allow you to put it in a residential zone if it's an RV park model. But
that is that would be a manufactured tiny home rather than a modular tiny home, I would think.
correct.
But I have found modular homes as small as 500 square feet, but nothing any smaller than that is being built in Arizona. Could be built elsewhere. There's a lot of this stuff being built in California.
And I'm not super familiar with the building code, but zoning standpoint, I mean, this can be done. You just want to be real sure that the modular home you're buying meets room size requirements and, I mean, all these things that I don't know how refundable they are once you buy them.
Yeah, because things like certain cities, they'll have to look at where they're going to put these, because certain cities require certain size of plumbing, certain materials that are different from each other.
What do we require?
Well, I think at this point we allow, the building code allows certain plastic type piping and things that you can go above that, So if you wanted to go to copper, you can. But in certain cities, like, I'll give you an example. In Glendale, we were allowing manufactured homes, but we were requiring them to be built to a certain standard above and beyond to meet the city's building code, because we were paying for it with federal money. So they were almost a custom type modular home, or actually a mobile home, but they were built by, I think it was Palm Harbor. They had certain types of plumbing in it, certain things that were required. And if it met that requirement, we could purchase them, put them in a mobile home subdivision. So, but in order to put it in, we required that be purchased that way. And so if they didn't meet those requirements, they couldn't come in to the subdivision. We were actually, because we were paying for it with federal funds. Now, if somebody brought their own unit, put it in a park, they're paying for it, that's fine. But the cities, even between Phoenix, Glendale, Tempe, they have some differences in their codes with each other. So sometimes it's the shingles, what the rating speed is. I used to argue with people over wind load on shingles when I was at the counter in Glendale, and the contractor asked me, so you're telling me if I cross 43rd Avenue from Phoenix into Glendale, the wind blows 30 miles an hour faster? And I said, well, realistically, no. What happened is our council with the building official decided we got hit with microbursts really bad. So there's a lot of insurance, claims. One of the ways we addressed it is by adopting a little stronger code on the shingles. So Glendale's requirements for shingles on houses is higher than Phoenix's at the time. When I was at this was in God, when did they start? 1991, 92. It's been that long when I was a certified building inspector and plans examiner. But that just gives you an idea that sometimes they can be a little different. So when they're building these things modular, they have to check the codes because of the city they're going into to make sure. And they can do that. They're building a factory, so they can just build that one unit to meet the requirements.
So Gilbert, like Tim said, we're working the 2006 building code, or 2007 electrical code.
Right.
But I have an extensive manufacturing background, and I know in manufacturing we'll leap and jump as soon as the law changes.
Sure.
So odds are those guys are up to date, and they may be building the 2019 building codes.
Yeah.
Certainly would be allowed.
We are allowed in certain cases to go to a newer, like with these solar fields. We've worked to we can allow the 2018 codes in some of the electrical items because they actually address solar farms. The codes that we have right now do not. So we consulted with Stantec, our consultant engineering firm, and see if our building code does allow us to make that exception, the building official to do that. So when we conversed about it, we went ahead and did that with these solars so they could go ahead and build it to the right, what they're used to doing. It doesn't mean it's any less safe, doesn't mean it just means that some of the newer codes allow different products.
Absolutely.
And so
we've evolved.
Yeah, well, and sometimes it's, and I hate to tell you this, but a lot of lobbying that goes on in the building industry for a company that comes up and says, I got this plastic product that I want to replace. It's cheaper than building copper, and I think it should be adopted. So it goes through this long process at the International Building Code, and they vote whether or not to allow it or not. You still can use the copper and some of the other products, but it allows this product that's been vetted through the process, and they've said it'll last and whatever. And the IBC or whoever used to be the Uniform Building Code, UBC, and they used to review it and vote to approve it and make it part of the code. And if your city approved that, they could make it, or they could have exceptions to it and say, we don't like that product, we're going to take it out, and we still want copper. So cities have that ability, and a lot of them have addendums. If you look at all the cities' building codes, a lot of the big cities like Phoenix, I think, created their own, and they have different codes requirements. But so it's not as easy as just that one code fits all. I know contractors would like to see that. It just cities are a little different from each other, and that's all over the country. I'm just telling you the process. So.
Is there any reason why we would not want to be using the most current code? Are they less restrictive or more restrictive to the people that are going to be doing it? I would think that code would be a safer and better product for the consumer than the reason the code was changed.
We've had comments from, I think builders, and if Dennis Gillespie could share that with us, that said change, because when you change the codes, it causes them to change their construction style. So what we're looking at right now is we've put it in the budget to change to actually buy all the books and do all the things, all the training. You have to send everybody to training because you can't just change it and then it doesn't miraculously, you have to have the staff trained up to go inspect it to that new code. So it costs money. And I finally was able to, I'm working to put it in the budget to go to the newer codes. As what we want to do is go to whatever the surrounding codes are around us so we're consistent with Pinal County, Casa Grande, Eloy, and I think they're on a 2016. And so we want to get in that cycle so that as contractors going to build in different cities, at least in this area, there'll be more or less the same codes. And so we're trying to get there. And I've got it in the budget to do that. So we'll see if hopefully it stays in. I have extra money for the books. They're expensive. You have to have them in all the code books in the library. You have to have them for staff electronically, and then send your staff to training. So that includes, building officials, whoever else is working on those. So, but yeah, we absolutely been looking at that. But prior to this, management said, no, we're not going to change right now. It said no. So,
I think
now,
generally speaking, the new ones have more stuff in them than the old ones.
They do, yeah, and that's where we went to those because we like some of the new things coming out, like the solar. Those are addressed specifically in the newer codes. They didn't have a place in the older code. We had to just apply the National Electric Code the way it is. But because there's a new section, it's better. So we were able to go there and use that. We just have to approve it, and then we tell the engineers, you can use this version of the 2018 NEC, and they're fine. So we can make exceptions like that right now, and we do.
The code for gas lines in the 70s was used PVC for natural gas lines. And we're still finding natural gas lines of PVC in Coolidge.
Yeah.
Because there's been no reason to dig them up from the house. Gas companies find them all the time when they're moving these meters up close to the house. They're finding PVC lines underground.
Oh yeah, well, it's special PVC. It's not water PVC. It's a gas line PVC. I used to inspect those as a.
But it's still PVC rather than what's now what is approved.
Yeah, but they're rated for gas. So at the time they were put in, they met the
Yellow
requirements.
with a blue stripe on it.
Yeah, they had they were different color. You had to run a wire through it so you can find it.
Yep.
It wasn't metal, and it's almost like the issue with the skirting we talked about. At one point they allowed corrugated metal with tar on it. And then when it changed, I was a mobile home inspector, and they said, wood? Really? Well, found out that the pressure-treated lumber lasts longer than the corrugated metal. When we went underneath, some of the units had been there a long time. They'd rotted out and rusted, and the dirt was coming in under the house. So lo and behold, the best thing to do is to put a block foundation underneath it. That'd be great, but not everybody can afford that. So, when you require the buried units, the pressure-treated lumber was better, and absolutely. So that was a change back in the day. That was, you saw the result of making that change was positive. It was good. So I'm just sorry it took us so long to take the laugh out of it. But we were already, we follow the Office of Manufactured Housing standards, so we have to follow those, even because they supersede any local code. If you're allowing mobile homes, we have an agreement with the Office of Manufactured Housing that we'll follow their codes. I used to train the city of Chandler building inspectors to the Office of Manufactured Codes because they said this doesn't meet the building code, we can't allow this. I said no, we have an agreement. The city of Chandler has an agreement with the Office of Manufactured Housing, so this is safe if you do it this way. And then after I got a nice letter from them. Thank you for clarifying why it's like this, because they were trying to enforce the building code on manufactured housing. And you can't run, in a house, you can't put a gas line in certain places where in manufactured homes they're allowed. Because that's how they're designed. And so I had to, in a tactful way, explain to them, because, they're trained and they're like, and I had gone through the manufactured home training, and I also went through the building inspector. So I know the differences, and I could convey it, and they, show them where, and they believe me. So, because they were frustrated, they're like, why are we approving this? And they'd disapprove something, and then we would say, they'd call us, the installer, and we'd go tell them, that meets the requirements. You can't disapprove that. like, well, the building code says this. I know, or the plumbing code, because it's gas lines. So, and we say no, but the Office of Manufactured Housing Code says this. So anyway, just a little background on building code. So it's
Did you get your answer?
in a roundabout way.
In a
I
roundabout?
apologize for the long answer, but just trying.
Well, I think we have to be ready for a whole different type of building environment in the next.
Yeah, it's certainly trending differently. That's absolutely true.
Tiny houses, modular houses, houses that are pre-fact and cut and ready to go and throw up, which is what Horton's doing. Other people are going to do that. It's a cost-saving measure for them.
Container homes.
And yeah, those things are all going to be coming, and we need to be on the knowledge of what's going to happen rather than say, no, you can't do that. Yes, you can do that, but it's got these limitations. It's like, we've talked before about putting a condex on a property. It needs to look similar to the property it's sitting next to. We're not looking at finding a steel condex box sitting behind a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever $100,000 home, having this piece of junk that's rusting out on the side of it. Something's got to do to match up with the surroundings.
And Chairman Halby, shipping container homes was another thing that kind of went along with this item. You see more of that, and really in the zoning code, there's nothing prevents you from doing that now. You need engineered drawings of your home that shows how they're going to be connected, how these holes cut for windows and doors are reinforced, and so engineered drawings. And like with the tiny homes and shipping homes or any other home, we have a set of design guidelines that were adopted that we use when we review subdivisions and they submit models. These guidelines apply to all lots within a subdivision in Coolidge, 16,000 square feet or less. So the area between the schools, these design guidelines, if you want to site build a house there, these guidelines apply. So if you were to do a shipping container home in one of these neighborhoods, the city can require you to stucco that when you're done and make it look, or a brick facade that looks like so it kind of conforms with the neighborhood. But again, with the shipping container things, that your hurdles are building codes and not zoning codes. Out in the ag areas where you have acre lots and stuff, and it's not a subdivision, these design guidelines do not apply. More than 16,000 square feet, not a platted subdivision. But within town, there is some attempt to make the neighborhood cohesive.
The answer too to, cities allow, experimental type construction that you want to look at. There's a great example in Tucson. They have a subdivision of just all different types of variety of homes, from straw-built houses to rammed earth houses, so they could see how these products work. And I took a tour of those. It was really cool. Because, it was really neat. It's kind of in the foothills near a mountain, that area. And we took a tour of those, and also some houses on the east side of Tucson that were more of the passive solar, large, thick walls within the house to collect solar heat and release it passively at night. I mean, it was really, really innovative stuff, really could. And I took a bus tour of council people from Glendale over there to see that. And because we were looking at, in Glendale, we'd looked at foam houses that had concrete poured inside the cells, but they're engineered. So that's what we use, as Tim mentioned. An engineer can say, this design meets the requirements and I'm sealing it, bam. So that allows the city to try that out. Now, eventually, if you like it and it becomes a standard, you can adopt it and change the code to allow it. But that allows you to try these new things that, so we can see it. Rick talks about a printed house where an actual arm pours concrete,
house,
and so they're printed, because that's also a new trend of how you build things. And so we're seeing that. So, we know that's eventually that'll come, and that's how we would do it, is we'd have an engineer stamp it because the manufacturer wants it to be an example of what can be done. So that's the venue we would use to get that in so we can see it, is the engineer seal. Because the building code is really the minimum. You can always go above it. It's if you don't have an engineer seal, you use the building code. Like a beam of wood is a certain size. Building code said this will pass. But if an engineer seals it because they think another size will work, different lumber, that's fine as long as he seals it, because he's using the seal to say, I'm using my knowledge and everything to pass this, it'll work, and you don't have to worry about it. Okay, that's fine. And it could be closer to what it'll hold. Anyway, I just added that for knowledge.
I thought it was interesting after Ken had mentioned he'd like to have this on the agenda. Channel 10 actually had a little piece on early in the morning. You can probably search it online on
Yeah.
shipping container homes. And there's a whole little property up in Prescott that's all shipping container homes.
Phoenix has a multi-story, multi-family project on Grand Avenue. As soon as you go on the west side and turn up Grand, you're going towards, you'll see it. It's got a centerpiece. It's all block, and the containers are up against it. But it's been finished, and I haven't seen what it looks like because I left. I haven't driven back up there, but I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
But it was something they were trying to do.
It really takes nothing more than a Google search of shipping container
Find 'em everywhere.
structures and
Yeah.
use commercial buildings, apartment
With our
buildings,
inland
houses.
port,
Amazing.
Long Beach is inundated with shipping containers.
Oh, we'll have one.
I can only imagine what this is going to look like in another 20 years. Right? So if we could find a good, suitable use and provide affordable housing for people, that'd be a great use for that.
And
Repurpose.
again, Chair, how this would be a shipping container community would be a great opportunity to utilize PAD
Yeah, absolutely.
zoning and kind of set your standards outside the norm of, what you see everywhere else.
It's a tool we would use.
Perfect.
And so this is not limited just to tiny homes or shipping containers. If you guys got other stuff and it's discussion, we're not taking action, we can take recommendations if you have some stuff related to zoning code. Building code is not under your purview. Or city code. That's what the lawyers told me.
But we'll listen to you if you want to say something.
Yeah, I will.
We're not going to tell you no.
All right. So we close the discussion?
I think, Chairman Halby, that this is a public hearing too.
Gotta open it.
It is a public hearing.
We do.
Sorry.
Yes.
You gotta ask all that public.
I thought, you might get a few people straggle in for this conversation, but, because it's interesting when you
This
really
is a
start
public
looking at
hearing.
what's been done and what can be done.
So at this time, we'll open it to the public. Anybody like to speak, please step to the podium. We don't have anybody stepping to the podium, so we'll close the hearing to the public. And can I get a motion? Do I need a motion?
Or does Gilbert have anything else he wants to
I
add?
just- We're down to Director.
Well, we don't need a motion to move off item C,
We can just table it
but
for
if
now?
there's nothing even to table,
Yeah,
if
just discussion.
if the commission would like to provide any direction to staff, we can take that. Otherwise, you can move on to reports from the chairman and director.
Anything? No? All right, we'll move on to reports from the director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, I provided that summary just give you an idea of some of the things we've done throughout the year. And the only thing I'll add to it is, for those of you, I think maybe everybody's heard it, Nicola, there was an article yesterday, I think, and today in Forbes. It's on Facebook and it's on Twitter, where they're doing a merger that's worth $3.3 billion with Vector IQ, which is so actually, Nicola, this process allows them to go public, instead of just doing an initial public offering, an IPO, which is what normally happens. This is a process where they merge with another company that's already public, and then they file with the SEC, Security Exchange Commission. And so their new ticker right now for VTIQ is Vector IQ. It's under NASDAQ, not the New York Stock Exchange, but it's NASDAQ. And NASDAQ's where a lot of high-tech companies are. You'll find some of the higher tech companies under NASDAQ. And so it'll be NKLA, it'll be the new ticker for Nikola. So what this is going to do is bring in $525 million in additional funding. So it'll take them up over the $1 billion they need to start the plant. So what we've seen is they're talking about Nikola has raised about $600 million to get its hydrogen semis in production at a plant in Coolidge, Arizona, gaining a $3 billion valuation prior to this merger. But the funding, is for that. They are also talking about funding for the Badger fuel cell truck. I don't know if you've seen pictures of that thing.
Yep.
It looks like a Ford Raptor. Really cool looking. A lot different from Tesla's model that looks kind of like a rocket ship, I think. That's the only way I can describe it. It's very sleek and kind of...
It's like a wedge.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
And
Reminds me
but
of something I built in Boy Scouts.
the Badger looks like a truck. So, I mean, we saw that and went, ooh, that looks really cool. So, apparently, there's some interest from truck builders for that truck. So, it'll be interesting to see who steps up. But they haven't divulged who it is. But I think that's the reason why we started getting information from them, requesting timelines and everything down south. So, I'm working on that right now and providing them some details on submittals and getting permits and all that. So it's quite a facility. So I want to make sure we cover everything. So the team's having a meeting tomorrow, and we're going to just kind of go over everything so that we can give them the right information. And then we'll be meeting with their staff and going through all that. Hilgard Wilson is their engineer. So we've been working with them. We've also talked to who we believe they haven't told us officially who the construction contractor will be. I know Walbridge is building Lucid, and we've met with Walbridge. They're one of the largest high-tech manufacturer builders in the world. I mean, it's amazing what these guys have done. And we talked to them. We saw plans kind of laid out. We couldn't have them, and we couldn't take pictures of them. So they were holding them pretty close to their chest. And but we're excited about that because we saw what they're capable of. So you always want to make sure there's a very on some project like that, there's a prominent builder that's going to do that. Like you see McCarthy pull up on your commercial building, that's awesome. Like it's going to be a good product. So anyway, it's pretty exciting. I'm sure we'll find out who the actual construction builder is, if it's Walbridge or somebody else that's of that caliber. Because and then with the partners they have, they're not, they're partnered with this company now, Nell for the hydrogen. They're partnered with Iveco Europe. They're in Ulm, Germany. They're a manufactured truck company.
They're huge.
Big one, huge in the country. They make case tractors, Steyr, New Holland, I think, all over the world.
Used to have an Iveco.
And that's who I thought they may merge with at first, but they're a partner in Europe. So some of those trucks, they have the cab-over version, may end up here and being sold. So it may become disassembled, assembled here, held there under the Foreign Trade Zone designation area. It'll be created for them. It's already in process, and then they'll ship them out. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, that's all I have on that. I just want to share that information with you. And if I find anything else that's really cool, I'll send it out. It's pretty exciting stuff. I'm like, finally,
Yeah, that's exciting.
I want to drive one. I told them I took a tour of the truck, and I said, well, this is a little better than my old Kenworth I used to drive over at Bechtel Farms. It only caught on fire twice. It was a little farm truck.
Have they said anything else about the new battery that they have developed?
We haven't seen anything else. I know the latest we saw on that is that they're looking at some partners to help bring that to market. We don't know who that is yet, but so that's also, they have so many different fronts they're moving on, different things, and
That's their battery wall.
pretty amazing.
They
Have a denser battery that doesn't require all the rare metals that usually are found in China
Okay.
and are harder to acquire, and supposedly safer. So, but they haven't divulged any of the technical data on the battery, obviously.
They said it was 40% lighter
Yeah.
and had a
Denser, density's higher, holds more power, so
Yeah, it holds
energy, I guess.
double the power, and it's 40% lighter.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, it's always been known that battery technology hasn't moved as fast as other things. So, I always thought if I could find that company that's going to develop that, I'd invest money in it because that's going to be
But
like.
they won't tell anybody who they're working with.
No.
They're working with some university on this.
Yep.
And that was all the information that they would give.
Yeah, they didn't put out
Or
anything
in
on that.
Massachusetts.
Was it MIT? Could be. I don't think they were real specific on it. But MIT would be a good guess.
Well, Arizona State University would be a
Yeah.
good guess too, with their offices
Absolutely.
being right there in Phoenix.
Yeah, they are. We're taking a tour. We've taken tours of their facility. It's pretty impressive over at Gateway.
Yeah, they're Polytech.
Yeah, the Polytech is one of the top in the country. And we've asked them, have you been working with Nikola? We've contacted them. So they've talked, but they're not working on something right now. But never say never. They're right here. So we'd love to get them together to work on stuff.
Good resource.
Chair, that's all I have.
That's all you have? All right.
And that
Chairman
report, if you guys
Helby?
have any questions, please give me a call. If you have questions on anything in that report, go ahead, call me or send me an email. Sorry.
Chairman Helby, I move we adjourn.
I have to do a call to the public first.
Oh, do you?
I do. Since this is a public hearing, I must call to the public. So at this time, we'll make a call to the public. Nobody came to the podium? Now, I will accept your,
Chairman Helby, I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all for being here. We appreciate all your hard work.